Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. It is that on Wednesday, the SEC released their 2024 football schedule. Now, many of you probably sit there and say, Torres, we haven't even played 2023. Why do you care? Why would anybody care? Well, if you're listening, you probably know. It is because 2024 is, of course, the year that Texas and Oklahoma come to the SEC. And so we got to see for the first time, okay, Texas, they got to go to Texas A&M. Georgia's coming to Austin. Oklahoma is hosting this team. So we got to see it all on paper. And what I want to do here over the next 10, 12, 15 minutes, whatever it takes, I just want to react to these schedules. Remember, 16 teams in the SEC starting in 2024, including Texas and Oklahoma, 8 league games at least for the coming season. Yes, my guess is that we eventually get to 9, but for now, we only have 8. Let's get to some immediate reactions, and I just want to make one thing clear. I am reacting in real time to everything that we just saw on YouTube. So if my eyes are wandering and, oh my goodness, why does he keep looking at the corner of his screen? Listen, forgive me. I don't have 16 team schedules memorized off the top of my head, but I took a bunch of notes when I was watching. I have several marquee takeaways from the SEC 2024 schedule release. Let's get to it. Drum roll, please. Opinion number 1, reaction number 1 to the 2024 schedule release. 1, I will say that I am glad that for the most part, rivalries were kept intact. And so if you remember, it's been a big topic of conversation over the last couple months. Do you go to 8 league games or 9 league games? If you go to 9 league games, you have 3 permanent rivals. And obviously you would have then 6 other teams that you would play every other year. But if you go to an 8-game schedule, there is only 1 permanent rival. And so coming into Wednesday, the question became, okay, we all know that Alabama's permanent rival is probably going to be Auburn. But what does that mean for Auburn, Georgia? What does it mean for Alabama, Tennessee? What does it mean for Alabama, LSU? If you look at a school like Texas, if they only have 1 permanent rival, is it Oklahoma, the Red River Shootout? Is it Arkansas? Is it Texas A&M? And so my number 1 biggest takeaway is this. I never understood why, if we're only positive we have an 8-game schedule for 2024, why we had to assume that rivalry games were going to get eliminated. And I want to give the SEC credit. I think all of those rivalry games that make college football, most of them were remaining and retained. Now, if you're a Tennessee fan that still has Georgia and Bama on the schedule, I don't know if you're thrilled. If you're an Auburn fan that has Georgia and Bama on the schedule, I don't know that you're thrilled, but I think that you probably are. Because rivalry games are what make college football. There's nothing like it in any other sport outside of maybe college basketball, where you have genuine hatred between fan bases. Respectfully, you go to the biggest rivalries in pro sports. What is a big pro sports rivalry? Eagles, Cowboys. Like, I don't, like, the fans, I guess, sort of hate each other, but you're talking about 2,000 miles between cities. You're talking about one being good and one not being good. I know they were both good last year, so don't get me wrong on that. I don't know that the hatred is as extreme as in Alabama-Auburn, as in Auburn-Georgia, as whoever, Texas A&M. And so I am so thrilled that for the most part, everybody who has rivalries was able to keep them. For people who have not seen the schedule, Texas and Oklahoma still playing, but we get Texas at Arkansas and Texas at Texas A&M. We also get Alabama playing both they're probably, if we stick with 8 games, that one permanent rival, Auburn, but we also get them playing Tennessee. We also get them playing LSU. So one, kudos to Greg Sankey. As I said, if we're only sticking with the 8-game schedule for 1 year, never understood why for this 1 year you couldn't keep most of those big rivalries intact, and that is largely what happened on Wednesday night. Reaction number 2. I don't know what the date is, but for just, I think, the 4th time since Nick Saban got to Alabama, we get Georgia and Bama in the regular season in the SEC. And the thing about this, so we don't have a date. Georgia goes to Tuscaloosa. But every time, I was thinking about this, every time these two teams play in the regular season, it is always unbelievable. There's always a storyline of it. 2008, you guys remember the blackout game? That was the first like really big win of the Nick Saban era, where they went to Georgia. They played Georgia in a night game in Athens. And the famous quote was Georgia was wearing black uniforms, and Alabama's strength coach at the time, Scott Cochran, said they're wearing black funerals because they're going to their own funeral. They're wearing black uniforms because they're going to their own funeral. So you had the blackout game. You had 2016, which was a year where Alabama hadn't been an underdog forever. They're an underdog. They destroyed Georgia. Obviously, a few years ago, they played during the COVID year. They've played some classics over the last couple of years in Atlanta at the SEC championship game. So the fact that we get this in the regular season, I could not be more fired up. And here is the cool part about it. The cool part is, listen, a lot is going to change between June of 2023 and September, October, November of 2024. I still believe these two programs are going to be the class of college football and the class of the SEC. That's not a disrespect to any LSU fans listening or to whoever, Tennessee, I know you're on the rise, whoever, Florida, if you're trusting Billy Napier, and I'm not sure that I am right now, we'll save that for a minute. But the point I'm trying to make, A&M fans, Texas, whoever, whatever, they're going to be the class of this league. Alabama, yes, they have to figure out the quarterback position this year, but do you know that statistically they still have the most talented roster in college football, according to the blue chip ratio, Bud Elliott, that came out earlier this week? Georgia is going to be phenomenal next year as well. So great game. I am so excited. Just cannot wait for that game like so many of you. Let's keep it going with reaction number 3. And this is when I'm going to start to, the eyes are going to dart as I try to keep up with everything. But we got the first Texas and Oklahoma schedules of the SEC era. Reaction number 3 and reaction number 4. The Texas schedule is just a little bit easier, but there are some very interesting marquee games there. And by the way, I already saw it on social media. LOL, of course, Texas got the easier schedule. I don't know if you can really say they did, but let me lay it out. This is who Texas is going to play in their first season in the SEC. Texas is going to host Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. They will have only 3 road games because, of course, they'll play Oklahoma in the Red River game, and then they will play at A&M, at Arkansas, at Vandy. So people sit there and say, well, they get Vandy and they get Mississippi State. Those are 2 very easy games. Kentucky, respectfully, we got a lot of Wildcats fans that listen, is a team at home you should take care of. But here's where it gets interesting if you're Texas. The SEC league offices, man, oh man, I don't know if it's a sense of humor or a sense of anticipation and excitement, but how about sending them to Kyle Field and to Arkansas in year 1 in the SEC? Because at the end of the day, what I can tell you is this. I don't know a lot. I'm Forrest Gump. I'm not a smart man, but I know what Forrest Gump. I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. Well, Aaron Torres, I'm not a smart man, but I know what hate is. And I don't think there are 2 fan bases that hate any other school in college football as much as Arkansas fans and A&M fans hate Texas. Of course, the Arkansas relationship goes back to the old Southwest Conference days. It's crazy because, of course, Arkansas has been in the SEC for 30 plus years at this point. But listen, we got a lot of listeners in Arkansas, A lot of them are in the 50, 60, 70-year-old range. And I am here to tell you, you want to get their blood boiling, talk to them about Texas. And of course, if you're really an old school college football fan, you know that throughout the 60s, these two teams played every year, top 10 in the country when Frank Broyles was at Arkansas. And you better believe that every year there were national championship implications on the line, even in the pre-BCS, pre-playoff era. But I will say this. And by the way, they played 2 years ago in Fayetteville, and it was insanity. It was one of the craziest atmospheres that I have ever seen when Arkansas just smacked Texas in the second game of the Steve Sarkisian era. But I'll also say, as much hatred as there is for Arkansas for Texas, I don't think anything hates anything else more than Texas A&M hates Texas. So to send Texas into Kyle Field, 100,000+ fans, 12 years after Texas A&M left the Big 12 for the SEC, that might be the game of the year in college football outside. It's going to be hard to top Georgia, Alabama, but from a hatred perspective, from an anger perspective. By the way, if you're a Texas fan walking in that stadium in burnt orange, you're braver than I am. That game is going to be insane. Also, again, Texas gets Georgia at home. With that said, though, I got to say this. I think Oklahoma got the much tougher draw of the two teams. First of all, again, because their game against each other is on a neutral field, it means that one team is going to get 3 home games and 4 road games. One team is going to get 4 home games and 3 road games. Texas gets the 4 home games, 3 road games. Oklahoma has the neutral site game against Texas. But then here is the schedule for Oklahoma in year 1 of the SEC. Alabama at home. Tennessee at home, which, by the way, we'll get to in a minute, but a Josh Heupel revenge game. And then you have to go to LSU, which is going to be awesome under Brian Kelly, to Ole Miss. As long as Lane Kiffin is at Ole Miss, they're going to be very good. And to Auburn, which I think will be heavily improved under Hugh Freeze. They got like 7 commitments this week as I'm recording here. And then you have at Missouri. So I bring it up because you look at that Oklahoma schedule. I don't know. Again, I'll go back to it. I think Lincoln Riley left in part because he knew it was going to be hard to compete at the highest level at Oklahoma in the SEC. But we're going to find out early. Alabama at home, Tennessee at home, Texas on a neutral, at LSU, at Auburn, at Ole Miss. That is not an easy way to start. Oh, by the way, that Missouri game, of course, is an old Big 12, Big 8 rivalry game as well. Let's keep it going with reaction number 5, and I kind of just spoiled it, but how about Josh Heupel and Tennessee going to Oklahoma? Why is that important? Well, Josh Heupel's an awesome coach. Tennessee had the number 1 ranked offense and defense, or number 1 ranked offense and scoring offense last year in college football. They're going to Oklahoma, where Josh Heupel played. And remember, Josh Heupel, how about this for a narrative? Josh Heupel led Oklahoma to a national championship. Josh Heupel then returned as an assistant coach and was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and got fired by his alma mater. Had to go back down. I think he coached at Utah State for a year. Built himself back up to Central Florida, to Tennessee. You don't think he's going in with a chip on his shoulder to that game? So that is a big one to circle. Josh Heupel's return game from Tennessee to Oklahoma. Let's keep it going with reaction number 5 as I'm quickly just trying to piece together the rest of this segment. You know, I mentioned Tennessee on top of the Josh Heupel return. Very interesting schedule for Tennessee because, and I don't know, Tennessee fans, you tell me, do you like it? Do you not like it? Is that, first off, you kept the 2 big rivals that are just a thorn in your side. You have Bama and Georgia in 2024, Bama at home, Florida also at home, and then Georgia on the road, much like last year. What's interesting to me about the Tennessee schedule, again, I give the SEC offices credit because what we want are games between fan bases that do not like each other. And what I can tell you is all of those hated rivals, or even if you don't want to call them a rival, But like Tennessee and Kentucky, those fans, you guys don't get along. I know it for a fact. I've seen it on social media. I've been caught up in the middle of your guys' back and forths, okay? So Tennessee gets to keep Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and Kentucky on that schedule. I know y'all hate each other. So that is going to be unbelievable because you get all those great games that everybody wants to see. I think Josh Heupel is going to keep it at an elite level, and those are going to be must-watch games. I mentioned that Tennessee is on Georgia's schedule. I'll say this. I think you can argue that Georgia got the toughest draw of anyone in the SEC in 2024. And by the way, maybe that's how it should be. Historically, the East has been the easier division. Remember, I should have mentioned this off the top. There are no longer divisions in the SEC. And so I bring it up because of the fact that Georgia doesn't have the East schedule. And how about this? They basically got rid of the 3 worst teams in the division. So Georgia in 2024 will not play Vanderbilt, will not play Missouri, will not play South Carolina. I know last year South Carolina was good, so not trying to discredit them. We'll see if they can keep it up. But I bring it up because Georgia lost those 3 teams, Vandy, South Carolina, and Missouri. They still have Kentucky. They still have Tennessee. They still have Florida as well, so they'll still have the cocktail party. And then how about this? They have to go to Texas and to Alabama. So that is Georgia's 2024 schedule. At Texas, at Alabama. Now they will get Auburn at home. I should have mentioned Auburn, of course, the Deep South's oldest rivalry is still going on. At Auburn at home, Tennessee at home, Florida on a neutral field. So 3 home games for Georgia, plus the neutral field game against Florida. Plus, on top of that, at Alabama, at Texas, and I'll take it a step further. They play at Ole Miss next year. I'm telling you, as long as Lane Kiffin is there, that won't be easy. I should mention, if Georgia got the toughest schedule, I think Florida is probably number 2. They have LSU, Ole Miss, and A&M at home. One thing I'll say about A&M, remember, that 2022 recruiting class, number 1 in the history of the sport, if they're still there, they're all going to be juniors and ready to freaking go. And then on top of that, they have Georgia on a neutral, at Tennessee, at Texas, Mississippi State. Couple other quick reactions before we get out of here. I'll say this. Arkansas fans believe, from what I can tell, I'm not one, that the SEC offices hate them. Well, I'll just say this. I think Arkansas has a relatively manageable schedule in 2024, all things considered. No Alabama, no Georgia, no Florida if you deem Florida to be good. On top of that, Texas A&M, Southwest Classic will still be in Arlington. So Arkansas gets 4 home games, 3 road games. The road games, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Missouri won't be easy. But then the home game, you talk about a loaded home schedule. LSU at home, Texas at home, plus Tennessee, which is going to be awesome, and Ole Miss, which is going to be awesome. But basically, the 2 games that Arkansas fans wanted at home, they got LSU and Texas. Those are going to be insane atmospheres. Cannot wait to watch. Finally, a couple other thoughts. One, Kentucky, I think they were one of the big no division losers here. They still have Vandy and South Carolina, but they also still have Georgia at home and Auburn at home, but have to go to Florida, a place where they've actually won, I think, 2 out of the last 3 times, to Ole Miss, to Tennessee, to Texas. So first of all, shout out Kentucky fans. You get the trip to Oxford and the trip to Austin. But I think 3 really tough games against probably 3 very elite offensive minds. Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, Josh Heupel, Tennessee, Steve Sarkisian, Texas. Finally, last reaction. I don't think I have very much else. A&M, obviously, listen, Texas A&M is going to be awesome. My only other reaction, I've seen a lot of Auburn conversation. Like Tennessee, they still have their 2 rivalry games with Alabama and Georgia. But how about this, Auburn fans? No LSU, no Ole Miss, no Mississippi State. Historically, those aren't what I would call rivalries, but they're schools that have played quite a bit. And finally, let me say this. Considering that Alabama has Georgia on the schedule, I don't think you can say it's easy. I think you can argue Alabama's schedule might be a little bit easier than a lot of people think. Still have rivalry game against Auburn, still have a rivalry game against Tennessee, but those are both at home. But you now get South Carolina out of the East and 2 of your 3 road games. Vandy on the road. So you get, I want to take that back. So you get 3 teams that historically have not been great out of the East, and you usually would only get 1 because you always get Tennessee, right? Well, how about this? Alabama gets Missouri and South Carolina at home, plus at Vandy. And then from there, the schedule is interesting. Still have at LSU, at Oklahoma, at Tennessee, and then Auburn and Georgia at home. Can't say it's an easy schedule with Georgia, at Oklahoma, at Tennessee, but it's manageable by SEC standards.